800 587 1046.
Now, our top story this morning, seismologists say it could be months before they understand what's causing a swarm of earthquakes near Newdigate. 2 more tremors were recorded on Wednesday. People are looking into it, including the British Geological Survey and the Environment Agency. They're planning detailed analysis and insist there's no evidence of a link to oil exploration work a few miles away at Horse Hill. BBC Surrey's Claire Cowan went to Charlwood to meet Surrey County Councillor Helen Clack, who was at home on Wednesday when it happened.
We'd had local committee in the morning and I was upstairs and there was just the most enormous bang, and the house didn't shake, but there was this huge bang. It felt so enormous, very similar to what's happened before. Nothing was damaged or anything else, but it is kind of scary to think that these things are still going on and we don't know why.
Well, quite literally unsettling. I mean, the ground is unsettled underneath, clearly, an unsettling feeling for you and other local residents, presumably.
Yes, I've had lots of emails from local residents because I'm the county councillor here, and they're all very concerned about why this could be happening, you know, and a lot of them are asking whether it's because of the oil and oil drilling that's going on. I'm putting everything I get on my Facebook page. I'm trying to make sure that everybody stays calm. No damage has actually happened as far as I know. I think I said we had a few photos that rocked a bit off the sideboard, but that's all that we've had. The most that we've had is that.
And that was last week or a couple of weeks ago. And in the front room here where we stand, you have some lovely family photos, as you say, on the sideboard, and some glasses as well. Just describe that moment then when. What happened there? Well,
that was last week, and we had another big bang, but we had a tremble as well, and it was the tremble that started to shake the photographs on the sideboard, and they're propped up and they fell flat. Oh, well.
But they seem to have survived because they're back up now.
Nothing broken.
I can imagine, you said unsettled before, I can just imagine that feeling of not knowing what's happening, what's causing it, and also when the next one may be. But as you say, you're reassuring residents, you are looking into it, and you'll keep them posted as well as us.
Look, we have to rely on evidence, and we have to rely on the professionals to give us that evidence. You know, as I say, I'm not going to be complacent. I will ask these questions. I do need to have that reassurance to share with my residents as well. But at the moment, I think these authorities are building up their own views about what's happening, and they are sharing those views with us, so we're being open about it. Let's be sensible. This, at the moment, I remember, as I said to my husband earlier, when I was at school in Hawley during the late 60s, we had a series of earthquakes. Back then, I remember we were in sort of Mission Hut type classrooms, and they really did shake, and we were all quite scared and had to leave the classroom on a couple of occasions. So perhaps it isn't as unusual in the world's history. Every 60 years, maybe. Isn't that unusual?
Well, the latest tremors have been recorded east of Newdigate on seismic monitoring stations set up by Professor Stephen Hicks.
The British Geological Survey location puts it quite close, actually, to the previous estimates. So just north of Ross Hill and I think a little bit to the east of Newdigate. So close to the previous estimates. What we do have now is there a much better constraint on the depth of the earthquake. So before we just didn't have the close enough station. So the BGS estimate puts today's earthquake at 1 kilometre depth, around there. So that's actually quite shallow. It seems to indicate to me that the earthquakes are occurring in sort of the softer sedimentary rocks closer to the surface rather than in the harder crystalline, what we call basement rock, a few kilometres deeper.
About 4 miles away, a company called UK Oil and Gas Investments is looking for oil, and they found some. 2 days ago, this happened.
First crude tanker leaves this extended well test programme.
That's Stephen Sanderson, who runs UK Oil and Gas Investments plc, which owns the Horse Hill site, known by some as the Gatwick Gusher. That's the site, not Stephen. He's with us now. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
That's your video. Tell us what are the latest test flows.
Well, it's early days, but so far things are very encouraging. I'd just like to say that we're actually not drilling. We're definitely not fracking. What we're doing at the moment is flowing oil to surface from one of the shallowest of 3 oil horizons that we found at Horse Hill. And we're trying to assess whether these pools contain commercial volumes of oil.
So one tanker so far, that's all you've had?
Yeah. We've got a lot of storage on site. We've had a tanker that contains 35,000 litres, which in oil field terms is about 214 barrels. But we've got more to go. But we're not looking at production. We're trying to assess, gather data, which enables us to estimate whether or not this is commercial.
So what are you using on site? Is it a big crane?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a drilling rig there or anything. We have a crane there for a few days at a time, which basically lowers things into the well and takes them out. So essentially what we're doing there, we're flowing oil to the surface using a very small pump, which is attached to basically a 600-meter-long steel straw that's about 3.5 inches in diameter. So that's pretty much all we're doing. I think it's worth pointing out that our operations, I think there's 11 of these tremors that are on the BGS website. For 7 of those, we weren't actually even on the site doing anything. Only one of the 11 we actually were flowing oil, and that was only for a few hours during that day. And I think we had about maybe 40 or 50 barrels of oil and water that came up during that period. So we've had very little activity going on throughout these tremor activities.
Right, so you're not breaking the ground. We've established that. But can you give us a 100% guarantee that these tremors are nothing to do with your company?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to say why it would happen when we're not actually doing anything. I mean, as I said, the one day that we were flowing oil, we're 5 to 6 kilometers away from the epicenters, and I'm a geologist by background, and the data that I've looked at shows that these tremors are actually clustered around quite a large fault which comes to the surface around Russ Hill, which I think, is presumably that's why the British Geological Society have actually cited one of their seismic recorders pretty much on top of that fault. I think your previous speaker said that these aren't that uncommon. In fact, there's 235 such earthquakes in the last year in the UK. Both the BGS and the United States Geological Survey categorize these as very small tremors. They don't do damage, as your previous speakers have said. I mean, I'm sure they're very upsetting, but
you can see, if we look at it, it's 4 miles away, it's around about the same depth, and it's recent. You can tell why people are asking questions, though, can't you?
Well, yes, I can understand why they're asking questions, but I think that, the Earth is a very dynamic planet, and, there's some major faults not far away. I mean, it's worth considering that the current oil flow that we have from the well actually comes from a zone that's within a radius of only about 300 meters around the well itself. So that's 5 to 6 kilometers away from where these earthquakes have actually happened. So it's pretty, I would say I'd say it's categorically that it's got nothing actually to do with us extracting oil from that site. I mean, if you look, there's been 100 wells drilled in the Weald area around Surrey, Sussex. There's been no earthquake activities associated with any of that. We had our flow tests in 2016. They went on for 50 days. There were no tremors associated with that. When we drilled in 2014, there were no tremors associated with that. There's 13 fields producing in the Weald, and there are no tremors that have been associated with that. So I think it's natural causes, and it's sadly for us, I suppose, it's coincidence.